One of the most effective ways that the GOP, the Republican Party, has used to try to keep black folks from voting so that they can win elections is to use various voter suppression tactics. Now, voter suppression simply means trying to keep the black vote suppressed. In other words, prevent blacks from voting in large numbers. And there is the 15th Amendment, which gives us the basic fundamental right to vote. There is the Voting Rights Act, which enforces the 15th Amendment. But as I've told you many times, the GOP has been busy the last about 11 years gutting the Voting Rights Act. So now, because they have gutted the Voting Rights Act in many ways, the Shelby County versus Holder case, I talk about it all the time. States are busy suppressing black voters. But they do it in a more subtle way than they did it prior to the Voting Rights Act. And back then there was literacy tests, there were grandfather clauses, there were all sorts of things, violence, intimidation, poll taxes to keep blacks from voting. And they're doing the same thing now, but it's more subtle. I'm going to be doing a video soon on disinformation because that is one of the most effective ways right now to keep black folks from voting. That is using a lot of disinformation. Disinformation that essentially tell black people that voting is useless, that voting doesn't help. You hear these, even many black, so-called pro-black, I call them pro-black imposters, who are all over YouTube telling black people voting is useless. Voting the couch is a good thing. You hear it all the time. You see, that's a form of voter suppression. And a lot of that is coming from, or at least through, right-wing operatives. Many of them are behind the scenes working with some of these pro-black imposters to keep black people, especially black men. They see black men as a very vulnerable demographic because black men have had a very hard time. They're frustrated, disillusioned with the Democratic Party. And so the disinformation comes along to confirm that bias that some black men have toward the Democratic Party. Well, that's one way. And it's very effective and it's growing, and I'm greatly concerned about it. But another way is, again, a lot more subtle, but it's very potent. And I'm going to share with you the story of a situation in the state of Arkansas where that particular type of voter suppression is being used. All right, we're going to get into it in this video. Stay with me until the end. You're going to see exactly how MAGA is trying to steal this election for Donald Trump. All right. Now, before we get into this, please go to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice, if you have a young African-American son in public school. The public school system mistreats African-American males, and you need to know how they mistreat African-American males so that you can be your son's strongest and most fierce advocate. All right? So go get your copy. So yes, in this video, I do want to talk about one of the ways that MAGA is trying to suppress the black vote. Again, you could call it sort of the new style voter suppression that Trump and MAGA are using against black voters while we sleep, unaware that it's even going on, but it's going on nonetheless. So I'm going to use a voter suppression case, as I told you, out of the state of Arkansas. This case involves early voting. Now, early voting is a common method for many blacks to vote, and that's because oftentimes African-American people cannot take the day off during the election to vote. But if there's early voting, then they can kind of plan it and work around their voting day and not even have to take that day off, can take some day off prior to the election. In fact, early voting has started in many states already, and a whole lot of people have already voted. And mail-in voting is another way that blacks vote, and it is the reason why MAGA tends to target, Trump and MAGA targets early voting and mail-in voting because they know that those are two primary ways that African American people vote. All right. Now, conversely, white voters, they have less restrictions about their work days and so on. And so they typically can get out to vote on the day of the election. So again, Trump and MAGA know that if they can interfere in any way with early voting or mail-in voting, they know that they may be able to shave off just enough black voters, especially in battleground states, to win those states. And unfortunately, because of disinformation, a whole lot of, from what we're being told, I don't know how true it is, but some folks are reporting that as much as 20% of black male voters under the age 50 plan to vote for Donald Trump. Said ain't so. I've done several videos just trying to show that that makes no sense because they are literally voting for a white supremacist and a white supremacist movement that will target black men, especially for more anti-black and anti-civil rights court rulings and so on. But back to Arkansas. I want to give you the facts behind this case. All right. This case involves a small city in Arkansas called West Memphis. Now, West Memphis is a predominantly black city. About 60% of the population is black. All right. So to get more details about this particular case, we're going to go to a court order that was entered regarding a conflict between the black residents who want early voting and the MAGA people who are opposing early voting in this particular jurisdiction. All right, so let's go to another screen, and I want to read you some of the facts from a judge's order. Okay, so this says here, if we start at the top, the bottom of page 1, it says, the 2024 general election is scheduled November 5th, 2024. Plaintiffs are residents of Crittenden County, I think that's how you pronounce that, Arkansas. They're over the age of 18 years and have expressed an intent to vote during the early voting period of the upcoming general election in West Memphis, Arkansas. Separate defendants, Frank Barton, Anita Bell, and James Pulliam, I think, individually, Barton, Bell, or Pulliam, collectively commissioners, are the duly appointed members of the Crittenden County Election Commission. Barton is the chairperson of the commission. Separate defendant Crittenden County is also being sued here, and it looks like West Memphis is could possibly be sued here as well. I don't know if that, and the reason I don't know is because up here at the top of this lawsuit or this judge's order, notice it says Frank Barton et al. That means there are other parties, but it doesn't specify who those parties are. Okay. All right. So during the 2022 general election, early voting occurred at the First Baptist Church, West Memphis, in Crittenden County. The proof is undisputed that this early voting location was chosen by the commission at a duly called meeting prior to the 2022 general election. So during the 2022 midterm election, there was early voting at the First Baptist Church in West Memphis. Okay. Now, on or about August 23rd, 2024, less than 2 months ago, the commission met and discussed one or more appropriate locations for early voting in the 2024 general election. All 3 commissioners were present. Following a discussion, a motion was made and properly seconded to provide for early voting at the West Memphis Library. Barton and Bell, who are both Republicans, voted for this motion, but Pulliam voted against it. Thus, the motion failed pursuant to Arkansas Code Section 7-5-418, subsection B1B. Additionally, on or about September 3rd, 2024, the commission met again and discussed early voting. Again, all three members were present. Following discussions, no motion was made, but Barton did announce that, quote, there is no early voting in West Memphis, close quote, for the 2024 general election. One day later, on September 4th, 2024, the chair of the Crittenden County Democratic Party advised Barton orally and in writing that Pulliam, the only Democrat on the election commission, desired to change his vote and requested that Barton call an emergency meeting on the issue of a location for early voting in West Memphis. To date, Barton has not called a meeting to discuss the issue. In his testimony, Pulliam admits that he never made a motion for an alternative location at any meeting of the commission, and Barton never failed to recognize Pulliam to make such a motion. Now watch this. This is key. On or about September 5th, 2024, Crittenden County Clerk Paula Brown advised the commission that she was designating the 7th Street Church of Christ in West Memphis as an early voting site pursuant to the authority granted the clerk in Arkansas Code Annotated Section 7-5-418, subsection A1A. Brown did not obtain prior legal advice on the issue of whether she actually possessed the statutory authority to unilaterally designate her own early voting site. So, to recap all of that, these three election commissioners, they met twice, but they did not decide on unanimously. Arkansas law required that they unanimously decide on early voting and where the early voting would occur. So at that first meeting, the two Republicans voted to have the early voting at the library, but Pulliam voted against it. And because that was not a unanimous decision, then no early voting could occur. The next day, the Democratic chair contacted the chairman of the election board, Barton, and said that Mr. Pulliam, the only Democrat on the board, wanted to change his vote, and he wanted to discuss where they wanted to have early voting, because that was the issue. So because the election commissioners could not decide on a location, the county clerk, Paula Brown, she decided on a location. She decided first there would be early voting, and she decided that that would occur at the Church of Christ. All right, let me see if I can get the name of it here. Just want to be factual. So yes, let's go back there. So on or about September 5th, 2024, Crittenden County Clerk Paula Brown advised the commission that she was designating the 7th Street Church of Christ in West Memphis as an early voting site pursuant to the authority granted the clerk. So she used her authority that was given to her under Arkansas law to say there will be early voting, and it will be at the 7th Street Church of Christ in West Memphis. All right. So what happened then? Well, because they were not able to agree, a lawsuit was filed on behalf of two plaintiffs who wanted to vote early. And this is the order that came out of that lawsuit. Okay? This came out of the lawsuit that those two voters filed against those three election commissioners as well as the county, right? So the judge found after hearing, after testimony, the county clerk, Paula Brown, was indeed authorized to determine that there would be early voting, and she was authorized to determine where that early voting would occur. All right, so I want to go to the judge's words so you can hear from him. And by the way, shout out to this judge for doing the right thing here. He wrote, whether termed mandamus, injunctive, declaratory, or otherwise. So very quickly, mandamus is when you're asking the judge to order someone to do something. Okay, we call it a writ of mandamus. Injunctive is where you're asking the judge to order someone not to do something. Okay, you are asking the judge to enjoin the parties from doing something. Declaratory, a declaratory judgment is where you're asking the judge to declare something. Okay, or otherwise, the judge says whether you want to consider this mandamus, injunctive, declaratory, or otherwise, based on Barton's testimony, counsel's argument, and the findings herein, the court hereby orders and directs the commission defendants to conduct early voting at the 7th Street Church of Christ in West Memphis for the 2024 general election in the same or substantially the same manner as early voting was conducted at First Baptist Church, West Memphis for the 2022 general election. The commission defendants shall conduct the early voting ordered herein and shall in all ways comply with all applicable Arkansas law concerning voting by the citizens of Crittenden County applicable to early voting, including without limitation, and then he cites all that law, together with all applicable rules, regulations, guidance promulgated by the State Board of Election Commissioners not in conflict with this order. To the extent any rule, regulation, or guidance of the State Board of Election Commission is in conflict with this order shall control. So the judge says, you got to do what I said. You got to have early voting at the West, what is this? Let me make sure I'm saying it right. At the 7th Street Church of Christ in West Memphis. So he ordered it. And he says you can call it mandamus, injunctive, declaratory, whatever. This is what I'm ordering. All right, so he basically supported and found that Paula Brown had the authority to do so. Now, it's a 25-page, well-reasoned, well-written order. I read every single word of it. And the judge was critical of the plaintiffs for the way they wrote it, wrote up their petition. And so he was obviously not biased toward anybody. And by the way, this judge is a Democrat. All right. So some could allege, well, he did that because he's a Democrat. Well, I don't know the man's heart. I just know based on what he wrote in this order, he went to length to show that he was not at all showing any bias toward the Democrats in that county. He reasoned very well and wrote out in very strong terms and simple terms how he reached his conclusion. And it was based on the fact that Arkansas law did in fact empower Paula Brown to designate early voting at a particular location. No question about it. I read it myself. And so I am just happy that he had the courage to stand up to MAGA. But MAGA was not done. Okay? MAGA appealed the judge's ruling. All right? So now it's a waiting game. And it may be that MAGA may win this fight because one of the things the court has said, and by the court, I mean the Supreme Court, has said is you don't make changes to election law a number of days ahead of the election. So despite this judge's ruling, a higher court, the court who's going to hear the appeal, and they may have already, I don't know, I didn't see where they had, may say, well, look, we're not going to let this early voting decision, the judge's order take effect because it's too close to the election. I don't know. Okay. But you see here, you got this fair-minded judge, but you got MAGA, who's working not only in Arkansas, but across the country. While we literally sleep, they are putting things in place to steal this election if Kamala Harris wins it and to give it to Donald Trump or to throw it toward him because of these sort of backhanded ways, these subtle ways that they are suppressing black votes. And again, one of the most concerning and disconcerting voter suppression methods right now is the use of disinformation. That is filling black people's heads up with a whole lot of misleading, intentionally misleading information, like what we saw with Byron Donalds at the Breakfast Club, just a week or so ago. And that's why I have spent time refuting what he said, because that's the way we're going to have to deal with this disinformation. We have got to absolutely refute it. And we need to refute it before they even say it, because this is very effective and it is working with certain demographics in our community, namely the young people and disillusioned black men. It is working big time. All right. So I wanted to share this with you because this is the type of subtle 2024 voter suppression that Trump and MAGA are using right here. This type of stuff right here. It looks on its face to be harmless, but it's very potent because, again, remember, all they want to do is shave off just enough of black votes, either by getting them not to vote or by convincing them to vote for Trump, a white supremacist who is the figurehead of a white supremacist movement. Now explain to me how any black person can find that it makes sense to vote for such a group of people. It doesn't make sense. But anyway, I just want you to be in the know. I want you to be informed about what's happening. Okay? I am Attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. This is the content we bring you on a weekly basis. Until the next time, peace. And make sure you go vote. Make sure you go to iwillvote.com and make sure you're registered to vote. All right? That said, I'm out.